Evolution. What do we know about it? Pokemon change physically, they learn more attacks, and might even change type. Yet it still baffles every Pokemon professor out there. Oi, come on you guys, they get stronger and change, not that hard to figure out. But maybe it's because there are so many ways to evolve Pokemon. It's not just gaining experience. I mean, some of these guys evolve in the most complicated and bizarre of ways.
You can't pump them all full of rare candies, so let's blow our minds and find out how many ways we can transform our cute little critters into beasts of legend.
Process 1. Leveling up.
Leveling up is probably the most common way of evolving Pokemon. You go out in the grass, grind them out, and if I were you, I'd be on an Audino hunt. Seriously, kill those guys.
There are certain Pokemon, like the starters, that always evolve around the same levels. Starters tend to always evolve into the second evolution around levels 14 to 17, and into their third evolutions around their 30s. Actually, most Pokemon evolve into their final forms around their 30s or 40s. But then there are ones like the pseudo-legendary dragons who evolve at ridiculously high levels, with Hydreigon being the highest at level 64.
Rare candies also help you level up quickly. You lazy punks.
There are also other ways to level up to evolve your Pokemon, but this method doesn't count on which level you reach, but where you are at the right time you do. Nosepass will only evolve into Probopass if he's leveled up in Mount Coronet in Sinnoh, or Chargestone Cave in Unova. As we mentioned before, the evolutions Glaceon and Leafeon all took advantage of this process. Some Pokemon can only evolve if you leveled up knowing a certain move. This was mostly used for all the new evolutions for the old Gen 1ers in Generation 4, like Tangrowth and Mime Jr. Leveling up with Friendship is pretty easy, I'd say. Most of the time I just end up running around with it for an hour and then leveling it up suddenly. Voila! Level 2 Lucario.
Huh. I don't think that's complicated enough. Let's make it more complicated.
Pokemon like Gligar, Sneasel, and Happiny only evolve to their next evolution if they are leveled up while holding a specific item during a specific time of day.
I'm sorry, but that is too much trouble. How did they figure this out in the Pokemon world? Oh, I wonder what happens if I level you up while you hold this item at 3:25 in the morning.
I mean, Sneasel and Gligar's Razor Claw and Razor Fang at least have a purpose outside of evolution. They're also battle items. But Happiny needs to be holding an Oval Stone during the day, and all the good an Oval Stone does is make Happiny evolve. They might as well have made an Evolutionary Stone. Process 2. Trading.
To me, this was the most annoying process of evolution.
Mainly because when I was a kid, almost none of the kids in my neighborhood played Pokemon, and all my friends who played it at school weren't allowed to bring their Game Boys to school. It was a bitter defeat for me back then. But now, it's not so hard. The evolution process isn't that hard to begin with. You just trade your Pokemon to your friend and it evolves once it gets to them. Now you just need to trust your friend to give it back to you.
But what if you didn't have any Poke-Friends? This was the absolute only way to evolve these Pokemon. Forever alone, people.
Let's not even get started on that moron in Snow Point City who trades you a Haunter holding an Everstone. Why? What have you done?
Also, once we got to Generation 2, Game Freak decides to get all complicated on us.
Most of the traded evolving Pokemon only evolve if you trade them while holding a specific item. But to its credit, most of these items aren't too hard to find. Most of the time they're given to you by side characters or citizens. But some of these are just weird. I mean, Onix turns into Steelix when traded while holding a metal coat. How? Is there some kind of radioactive flaw in the trading system? Someone needs to proof test these things. The only one of these that actually makes sense is Porygon's evolutions. Since it's based off a computer program, it makes more sense for it to be upgraded into something better.
And then there's these little jerkwads, Shelmet and Carablast.
These two only evolve into Escavalier and Esselgor if you trade them with each other.
And also you'd think the one that looks like a knight would be the one that looked like a helmet, but no, it's the exact opposite.
Carablast evolves into Escavalier because it steals Shelmet's armor during the trading process, giving it a high defense. Shelmet turns into a Selgor and raises its speed due to the fact that it doesn't have its shell anymore. Sheesh, where did they come up with this stuff? The King's Rock also has two Pokemon which it can make it turn into one thing or the other. Slowpoke can either evolve into a Slowbro at level 37 or into a Slowking if traded while holding a King's Rock. Poliwhirl, on the other hand, can evolve into a Politoed if traded while holding a King's Rock, or into a Poliwrath if it uses a Water Stone on it. Which brings us to our next subject. Process 3. Evolutionary Stones.
Now, we all learned about Eevee's freakish bionic mutation that allows it to evolve into freaking anything, but we haven't covered all the stones yet.
They're the basic ones like the Leaf, Fire, Water, and Thunderstones. They were used a lot during the first couple generations, but for some reason have died down since then.
Oh gee, maybe because all the crazy trading evolutions took up all the space.
Unlike the previous ones, the Moonstone is a Generation 1 introduced stone, and it still seems to make an appearance in recent generations. It's mostly associated with Clefairy line, but it also evolves Pokemon like Nidorina and Munna. Sunstones so far have only been able to evolve Grass-type Pokemon, which is pretty clever. Pokemon like Gloom can actually only evolve into 2 different Pokemon with the help of stones, being a Leaf Stone for Vileplume or a Sunstone for Bellossom. Shiny Stones are a different story. They were introduced in Generation 4, and when I first heard of it, I thought it would actually evolve any Pokemon to its shiny version. Boy, was I wrong. Shiny Stones only evolve Pokemon like Roselia to Roserade to Togetic to Togekiss. It's kinda weird. There's nothing particularly shiny about these evolutions, so what's in the name? Dawn Stones had the same story. What exactly does Gallade and Frostlass have to do with Dawn? I don't know. Dust Stones were also introduced in Generation 4, and have so far only evolved Pokemon in the Dark and Ghost types.
Finally, there's the Everstone. Now, this stone doesn't exactly make your Pokemon evolve as much as just keeps it from evolving. Now I know what you're thinking. Why would you want to do that?
Well, sometimes if you keep your Pokemon from evolving long enough, it'll learn different moves that it's not able to learn later. Or maybe just like that Pokemon more than its evolution. Don't act like there isn't one out there for you. I like Chinchou more than Lantern, and I like Flaffy way more than Ampharos due to the fact that it actually looks like a sheep. I mean, look at this thing! What is it? What is it? Okay, so Ampharos is awesome, it just doesn't look like a sheep, and I want a sheep.
Everstone's just an easier way to grind out your critter and level them up without having to press the B button every time you level up.
Process 4. Gender differences.
Now these are Pokemon that only evolve depending on which gender they are.
Only female Combees can evolve into Her Highness Vespiquen. That makes sense, because it'd be weird to see a Pokemon male looking like this. Oh wait, I'm wrong. When Ross's evolution line was introduced in Generation 3, it was possible to evolve a male Kirlia into a very effeminate Gardevoir. Though in Gen 4 they created a new evolution where if you use a Dawnstone on a male Kirlia, it'll turn to a Gallade, which just looks like a male version of Gardevoir. But that still didn't change the fact that some of these can still be males. Ah, whatever, we got male Lopunnies too. Snoruns are the same as Kirlia. Males and female can both evolve into Glalie on level 42. But if Snorunt is a female, you can turn it into a Frostlass when exposed to a Dawnstone. Last are the Burmese. These are strange little guys. Female Burmese only evolve into Wormadons, all while having that strange cloak condition going on. Males, on the other hand, evolve into Mothams.
Oh, and while we're on the subject, if ever there was a time to make the male and female differences on a Pokemon, it would be for freaking Sawsbuck!
The females have antlers! Every person on the freaking planet knows that female deer do not grow antlers! Why couldn't they make a Sawsdoe? Process 5. What the f***?
I saved all the I don't know evolutions for last. I don't know what they were thinking, and I can't put them into any other category, so they're part of the reject list.
Tyro can evolve into 3 different Pokemon at the level of 20. If his attack is higher than his defense, he turns into Hitmonlee. If his defense is higher than his attack, then he turns into Hitmonchan. And if both attack and defense is equal, then he turns into a Hitmontop. So you really have to tweak with the little guy if you want a specific one. And that means drugs. Lots and lots of drugs. Wurmple evolves on level 7, either Silcoon or Cascoon, depending on his personality value. This is something you can't change, so you're stuck with what you get. Here's a weird one. Mantine will only evolve into a Mantine if you leveled up with a Remoraid in your party.
What kind of sense does that make?
Feebas was introduced in Generation 3, the same generation that introduced the Pokemon Contest and Pokeblocks. If your Feebas has a high beauty condition, it'll evolve into a Milotic during level ups. But the Pokemon Contest died off in Generation 5, making way for the new Pokemon musicals and movies. Nowadays, you have to trade it while holding a Prism Scale to get a Milotic.
Finally, there's Ninkada's evolution line. Now, technically, Shedinja isn't actually the last in the Ninkada evolution line because Ninjask doesn't turn into Shedinja. Actually, both Ninjask and Shedinja both come from Ninkada itself.
To get Shedinja, you need to level up your Ninkada to level 20 to turn it into a Ninjask. Now, if you have an empty space in your party and an extra Pokeball in your bag, you will suddenly find a Shedinja in your party along with your Ninjask. It's supposed to be based off a cicada and the shell it leaves behind when it undergoes metamorphosis. Speaking of metamorphosis, remember when Ash's Metapod evolved into a Butterfree? Look! The Metapod shell is still there! What, did Ash throw it away after that, or did he keep it? I mean, it didn't look like it died. Look, it still has an eyeball! Creepy! Actually, the show had a lot of weird ways of making Pokemon evolve. In the show, Slowpoke can only evolve into Slowbro if a Shelder bit its tail. What happened to that Shelder? What if it wanted to become a Cloyster? Misty's Poliwhirl was just holding a King's Rock when she sent it out in one episode and evolved into a Politoed. If only it were that easy, Misty.
Well, that concludes the weirdies. Yeah, I know what you're waiting for. Mega Evolution.
Mega Evolution, Mega Powerful. Pokemon X and Pokemon Y.
Wow.
This has so far blew everyone's minds. It started when they released this new Mewtwo image.
People were calling it Mewtwo, Mew3. I was partially inclined to calling it Majin Mewtwo, though that never really caught on. That face.
But it couldn't be an evolution, right? I mean, Mewtwo's a legendary, and legendaries don't evolve. Soon enough, new forms of Lucario, Blaziken, Ampharos, Absol, Mawlie, and even Kangaskhan were released. I knew these couldn't be evolutions, they looked way too similar to the originals. Well, now we know that they're actually called Mega Evolutions with the X and Y games.
Supposedly, this phenomenon happens under some weird circumstance that has to do with a Mega Stone. Though, they actually don't stay like that the whole time.
I heard that they turn back into their normal forms outside of battle and can only be accessed in battle stage. Strange evolution, huh?
But even though this doesn't really make sense to me, a lot of these designs are really cool, and I wouldn't mind some of them staying like this.
Look, Absol's got wings! He's got wings, man! Freaking Lucario looks like he's on steroids. Oh my god. What is up with Ampharos? It's got hair. What? Hair? What? Dragon? Huh?
Well, that's pretty much all we have to learn about Pokemon evolution today. And you know what? I'm confused! That was confusing! No wonder the Pokemon scientists are having a hard time with this subject.
With only some genders that evolve, Pokemon that need to hold items, need to hold stones, need to use stones, need a condition that doesn't exist anymore, Pokemon that need to be traded, Pokemon that needs to be traded with a specific item with other Pokemon, Pokemon that needs to be with a specific area, and somehow spawns off an ungodly clone, and the ones who can only evolve during battle. Why? How? Oh my god.
I can only imagine how complicated it's going to get in the future. My brain's fried. I gotta go lie down. Wake me up when X and Y is considered primitive.